Salam alaikum. Alaikum pa cuenta en sala. What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are doing good. Friday, yes. Can't wait for the day's over to go and, well, not really, because you know how it is. Friday, we all be happy that Friday's here, and then Saturday and Sunday, what are we doing? We're working home, right? We either cleaning, washing clothes, buying things, that we need for necessities. So it's like life never stops. It just keeps continuing what we do. Sorry for the L train. I'm under the L. I'm going to try to get out of here. See if I could turn somewhere. I had a question that was asked yesterday, and the gentleman put a question asking me if I could talk a little bit about that he has seen, I guess on YouTube, or heard that some paleros, some tatas, treat their spiritual receptacle. And I mean Nganga. When I say spiritual receptacle, just remember I'm talking about Nganga, okay? What the palero uses, or palera. And he asked me, that he seen that they talk about that's their slave, And when we're speaking about that, you have to always differentiate from the Inisi, or the Mpungo, and the Mfumbe. The Inisi, for me, or the Mpungo is one thing, and the Mfumbe, for me, is another thing. It could be the same word that's being used. We could say Inisi, meaning everything, but because there are those who would just say my Inisi or my Mpungo, and they won't speak about nothing else. You understand? But for me, there's an Inisi and an Mfumbe, or there's an Mpungo and an Mfumbe. What's the difference? The difference is Mpungo is predominantly named by the Afro-Cuban tradition. They will call them Mpungo. The elements of nature are called Mpungos. And Africa, it will be called more Inisi. It's more like a Congo African style of saying Mpungo, but Inisi. So we use both, right? And then when you speak about Mfumbe, you're speaking about that spirit that's inside that receptacle, that spiritual receptacle, that Nganga, that Kindembo, Let me see if I could pull up somewhere if we could keep talking about this. I don't gotta keep jumping around, you guys hearing the holes and everything. All right, so as far as a Nganga or religious or spiritual receptacle being a slave, or that you would see some tatas call them slaves. Oh, that's my slave. He has to do what I tell him to do. In that regard, you have to understand that all houses, all lineages do not do things the same way. They do not construct an Inisi, construct an Mpungo, and also they do not just use any Mfumbe, any spirit. But there are tatas that were taught where there's one way or multiple ways of how to materialize a spirit for the receptacle, for the Nganga, for the spiritual receptacle. In other words, how they were taught of how to get a spirit that will work with them using that receptacle, or implementing that spirit in that receptacle. Okay, let's look at it in three ways. Let's try to see if we could break it down in three ways. There's more ways. I'm just trying to make it easier for we can all understand. All right, let's say I construct an Nganga with the right treaties that I need to construct it, and I need a spirit, right? And able to use that spirit in that Nganga for it to work and do the things that I needed for it to do, and vice versa for me and for it. All right. You will find some tatas would look for a spirit and use the means of kind of like it's a word play. They will use a word play while they're speaking with that spirit, almost kind of like tricking that spirit in order to have that spirit in order to encapsulate that spirit. You understand? And what I mean by wordplay, it's almost like trickery. You know, you're talking to the spirit a certain way, a certain form. The spirit's answering you back a certain way. The spirit kind of gives in, and you encapsulate that spirit, and you take that spirit with you. Now you bound that spirit in the religious receptacle, and now that spirit can't leave that receptacle, and it becomes your slave, because you really didn't, whatever you agreed upon with that slave, you didn't keep your part of the deal. You understand? In other words, so now he's bound inside there, and now since he's bound inside there, now is when you are offering things to it or whatever for it to work with you. Doesn't have no choices, already there, right? Okay, that's one way, right? And that's how, and the ones that you will hear that say that Nganga is my slave, those are the ones that you will hear that say stuff like that, because they either learned one way how to encapsulate a spirit, or one way how to use the spiritual realm in order to build an Inisi or an Nganga or an Mpungo, and that's the only way they know how to do it, or that's the way they just want to do it. Because you got to be honest, some people like working in certain ways, you know, the tradition. Now, let's say you are constructing a religious receptacle, spiritual receptacle, I'm sorry, an Nganga, a Kindembo, and you have an ancestor. Well, would you treat your ancestor the same way you would treat a spirit that you fooled, a spirit that you use trickery and words to manipulate for you could be able to take it and use it? No, your ancestor will be totally different. Actually, your ancestor is your family, so you will not treat your ancestor like a slave. You understand? That's one of the major differences from having a slave and having an ancestor. You know, the ancestor knows you, you know the ancestor. You guys have a relationship, so you guys kind of agreed upon working with each other, and it works like family. You know, just because, like I say, you don't see, they're not in physical form, doesn't mean they're not here. So you will use your ancestor, and you will help your ancestor, and your ancestor will help you likewise, like family members. You know, now, and that's the most beautifulest way to work, because that's your ancestor. You know, you're not gonna go over there and talk to your ancestor the way you want to talk to them. You know, you have to also look at it like, yeah, there are times where you're gonna get upset with your ancestor. Your ancestor's gonna get upset with you because you did something that they didn't want you to do or whatever, and that does happen, you know, in the spiritual realm with an Inisi, with an Nganga, you know. But as your ancestor, you're not cussing out your ancestor and wishing them to die, or you know, or treating them a certain way. Like if you had a slave with a chain around their neck and with a ball, iron ball, or they gotta chip cement and all that, dig holes. No, you don't treat that like that. It's more of a relationship bond. You know, it's better, it's fluid, it's more beautiful, you know. Now, let's say I don't have an ancestor, and this is what I don't have. I don't have an ancestor that I work with, but I have a spirit and an Fumbe that I do work with. But with this spirit, there was an agreement of working together. There was a contract of working together. It wasn't that the spirit was taken and it was encapsulated and it was put inside a spiritual receptacle, and now I have him locked in there. Now he has to do what I have to say. You understand? And if he wants anything, no, it's got to be when I'm going to give it to you. You got to do something for me to give you something. You don't know. When you have a spirit that you make a contract, you make a pact with, it's an agreement between you and that other person that is spirit, but was a person in life. And you both agreed on certain agreements. You make certain agreements between each other, and then that becomes more like a friend, like a good friend. And it gets to the point, majority of the times, that you look at it like if it is your ancestor, because the relationship is so great, and the bond that you have with that spirit it becomes so strong and so good that you look at that spirit not only as a friend, but you might look at that spirit even a little bit more than just a spirit. You understand? If you understand what I mean. Not every palero, every tata has multiple treaties of how to conform, how to make or build an Nganga, a spiritual receptacle, which we call Nganga. All right, I don't want you to get confused, because I know that there are tatas out here that they do build a spiritual receptacle, which is for the person, but it's only for the person. You understand? Then I know that we all know what an Nganga is. Nganga is what the priest or the priestess uses to heal, to help, and all these things of that nature. You see, the difference between mine is that I have more of a bond with it. You know, it's I don't treat mines like I hear people treat theirs as slaves. Mine, to me, it's not a slave. I treat the spirit in there with a certain respect, but at the same time, I don't bow down to that spirit. You understand? Because you have to understand that sometimes spirits could get lazy on you, you know, could not want to do a certain thing that you're sending it to do. So sometimes you have to be a little stern, but it's never to the point where you're screaming, "You are my slave." No, it's not like that. In other words, we have a friend, we have a saying in Spanish, and it kind of says, you never forget about an old friend. An old friend is never forgotten about. That's what's almost what, or forgotten of. An old friend is never forgotten of, because you have so much of a relationship with that Nganga and that spirit that's in there, that it becomes a great friend, and it's hard for you to forget about someone that you are always talking to, you're always sharing with, they sharing with you, and that you are also working with them and they working with you, not only in the physical but in the spiritual realm. I don't have anything against any tata, any priest or priestess that That's the way that they conform, that they built, or that they treat their spirit. Because, like I said, every lineage, every house does things different. There are tatas out there that have more different type of ways of how to make pacts and have different treaties that not all, they don't have to always kind of get a spirit with this kind of play of words and kind of like tricking the spirit till they capture it and put it in there. Yeah, there's tatas out here that have the ability to not just use those, but do things differently, like an ancestor, or speaking to a spirit and making a contract with that spirit, which is different than just capsulating a spirit with trickery and wordplay. You understand? I hope you guys understand what I mean. But whichever way they do it, this is how they practice. This is how they get things done. We have to respect everyone's way of practicing, everyone's way of doing certain things. You understand? When it has to do with the Afro-Cuban tradition. Not everybody does everything the same. As you can see, even using an Enfumbe, which is the spirit that's in the caldron, even in that, there's differences and different ways of doing it. Could I go and get a spirit and use a play of words and promises certain things, and then if it agrees, encapsulate it? Yes, I could. Do I want to do that? No. Because that's not my way of practicing. It's just not my way. Would there be a point in time maybe that I would have to probably get a spirit that's more inclined to do more of the stronger work? Stronger meaning for us more negative, because that's how we understand it. But it's stronger work. Yeah. But it will be in a different form, a different way. And you only do that when you're gonna use something just to hurt, to do some type of stronger and more endoki work. Okay? But I rather work with my Nganga. I rather have a communication, an understanding, a friendship, a bond. To be honest with you, my first goddaughter came because of a health situation, and she came. I'm in Philadelphia. She came 5 hours away from here. She lived 5 hours away from here, and she came, and just to give you a little bit of an example, she came with health problems. In other words, she could barely walk up steps, and even her facial expressions, the color of her skin, the way she was bending over and all that, you could tell that this lady had problems. And I initiated her. And I'm going to tell you, as soon as I initiated this lady, not only did we hear and see the things that came out of this lady as far as spirits, you could see the difference when we was done. When she came back upstairs to the house, you could see the glow. You could see her straight, no pain. The lady was crying. My granddaughter was, my godchild was crying. How grateful and thankful she was for what the Inisi did for her. And us, as me, I scratched her, I initiated her into my house. So these Inkisis do work, do help, do what you would call miracles, but we call them truths, reality. So it's all upon how you was taught, and how every lineage and how every house does their things. I don't speak down upon any of them. They, everybody has the right to do whatever they were taught, and simple as that. But are there ways that you could make a pact with an Inkisi without having to enslave it? Yes, there is. But that's the name of the game. That's how we differentiate in a lot of things in the tradition. But I hope that little bit that I gave you answered a little bit of your question that you put there. And I hope that whenever you receive your Inkisi, if you ever do, that you treat your Inkisi kind of the way you would like to have been treated, unless you was taught to treat it a certain way. You understand? Salam alaikum, maleko pa kwendensala. Have a great day, guys.